And we are live again with Alex Winter, back again for the Hake's auction. It's the huge November auction. I look forward to this every single time. I wish, honestly, Alex, I wish these were monthly because I could do the live stream. Hell, I could do these live streams weekly if you wanted to. But
if these were monthly, I'd be dead.
yeah.
A lot of work.
Yeah, you guys do a tremendous amount of work. How are things going? Speaking of, how's everything at Hake's going?
Good. Another great year. This will be our third premier catalog auction. And then in between that, we've had 3 online exclusive auctions, and the catalogs tend to be the higher end stuff. The online auctions are a mix of what we call collector friendly material. So we'll have 3 of each of those. So that equals 6. Market's been good. We offer a lot of different categories, right? So we'll do political and sports and action figures and concert posters and all that. So we have so many different areas that if one area is a little low, some are a little high, they kind of balance out. So it's been strong. It's just depend on what auction and what time of the year, what we have, what's done better than other things. But across the board, been very strong, and we've got some big things planned as we go into 2025. So.
Now, I know you guys have always been big on political pins, and you've had some wild sales. You have a lot of collectors that buy those through Hakes. With it being an election year, did you guys see an uptick as far as consignments for that stuff and for buyers in general, or
No,
same as usual?
Same as you. It comes up all the time. A new movie is out, a Batman movie or Batman collectibles up. The Yankees win the World Series, not this year, but Yankees win the World Series. It's Yankee memorabilia. Political things are happening, or the political collectibles go up. And not really. There's more of an outside interest from people who maybe aren't collectors that kind of get it caught up in the buzz. But within the collecting community, we're tried and true. We bid on things, whether our team is doing well, whether a movie did well, whether a comic book is selling well. This is what we live and breathe. So to us, it's an everyday thing and not sort of a heat of the moment, what's hot.
Right. Yeah. That's one thing that I love about you guys is you have such tremendous variety in your auctions, and it's big enough too, to where you've got the big items, but as you mentioned, you've got plenty of items that are, $100 and, $50, $100, $200, $500 that the everyday collector can get into. So yeah, you guys are really unique in that way for sure. Has there anything that's changed as far as, the auction rules or anything this year that we should mention before we get into some of the items?
No, everything's the same. I mean, this will end next Tuesday and Wednesday. So Tuesday is the political, historical, sports. Wednesday is always the entertainment. So it's comic books, it's action figures, it's the music. Both days at 9 Eastern. We start a 20-minute clock. So if things do not receive a bid in those 20 minutes at 9:20, they close. If they do receive a bid individually, those items open up for 20 minutes and then just kind of goes in waves until the final item hits 20 minutes without a bid.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And everything ends, I believe, on the 19th, 20th?
19th, 20th. Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. So we have to fire this thing off. We have to start with the cover page of the magazine. I believe that you have this nearby.
Mm-hmm.
It is
that way.
We've got a Nirvana focus around this particular auction. And well, first off, how did you get this? And then was it kind of the same Nirvana collector that decided to go ahead and sell off a few things, or is it just that you guys have just a variety of these things for this auction?
All right. So first, let me give my staff.
This thing is so cool.
As we go over some of these items, this stuff has touched the hands of a dozen different people here, and multiple consignment managers or consignment directors and multiple people that do description. So it's great we're having this conversation. They did all the work and I helped coordinate things, right? So this was landed by Scott Muscle. He's our director of Americana. So he handles the political, historical end of things, but he's also spearheading our music department. He's a big music fan. So concert posters, all of that kind of stuff. And he's also a big fan of this era. He was growing up at this time. Grunge is his world. So this has been about a year in the making that he knew of this guitar. And work to land it. So it wasn't easy. It took some decision on the owner to sell. It took, Scott to kind of broker the deal and make both parties happy with what that deal is. And after a year, here it is. And it is the front cover of our catalog. And as you mentioned, it's also part of a bigger grunge section. So we have different pressings of Nirvana from around the world of their various albums. We have concert posters. We have multiple things signed by Kurt Cobain. And that actually came from a variety of different consigners. So once Scott landed the guitar, he had other people he had been in contact with. He did a little tour of the Northwest, kind of went around and collected these items. So we have about 30 or 40 different Nirvana items of different types and from multiple consigners.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. I mean, I just can't stop looking at it.
Yeah, so I urge everyone that has an interest to go to the website to look at this, because the write-up that Scott did is incredible.
Yeah, it's long.
He worked with someone to do a 30-minute video on the person who got this at the concert and then gave it to the current owner. Fantastic interview that goes into the whole history of it. And so there's lots of backstory. The quick synopsis of it is, this was their first show in 1991, January 1991, when they were just a local band. And so he plays this and obviously abuses this on stage. It's all filmed. You can also go to YouTube and watch this. So this is what makes this guitar so great, is it's so well documented and vetted every step of the way. So discards it. The guy grabs it, gives it to his friend who is the consigner. And again, early 1991. Before Nevermind comes out. That comes out in September. By January of 92, 1 year later, Nevermind is the number one album, taking over for Michael Jackson, which was at the top of the chart. So this is, it's not the first guitar Kurt ever played. I wouldn't call it a rookie card, so to speak. But
Sure.
This is an early and historic artifact in Kurt's dynasty, Nirvana, music in general.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. I was sharing this with one of my buddies, and he was saying that it was kind of similar to where they had kind of a photo match shirt that Kurt had worn kind of in the same time period that was auctioned off, and it auctioned off for like a couple $100,000. Mm-hmm. So when you see this price at 105,000 with 7 days to go, there's people that, there's people that are going to be after this. Yeah. This is not something that pops up. Have you had one of these before? No. Quite like this?
No, we've never had any piece of music memorabilia ever on this level. We've had few items at all that are, as Scott calls it, the coolest thing we've ever offered. And it's kind of hard to argue that. It really is a special piece, and why we made it the front cover, because it may not be the most attractive guitar out there, right? There have been guitars that have sold in millions of dollars, including Kurt Cobain and others, and they're pristine or look new. This doesn't, sure. But there's a reason. And when you, again, watch the video and you read the backstory, this is, it is what it is. You would want it this way just because of everything goes along with the history of this piece and what happened on stage that night. So, again, I'm trying to speak on it as if it were the consignment I landed in. It isn't. So I'm doing my best, but again, urge you to go and read what Scott put together, the video, the description, and especially the YouTube video showing Kurt doing what he does to this in concert.
Yeah, it's a piece of history. It's just undeniable, especially, that grunge era has kind of morphed into its own, with all the folks that are my age, a little bit older than me too, that listen to all that music. And now it's, that now they're becoming of age. They've got some extra money, and that sort of stuff is, you just don't find it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll switch over sports card channel. So let's go over to a few sports card things. So you guys always have some sweet vintage stuff, always. And here we've got a 41 play ball Pee Wee Reese Hall of Fame rookie card, and it is signed unbelievably, and it's got a 9 auto grade.
Yeah, so this was, I don't know if we talked about any of these last auction or not. We might have. They all come from one owner.
Yeah, I remember that.
all of these signed cards, and most of were vintage. Most were pre-war, actually. So he was someone that very early on in the kind of autograph show phase in the 70s and 80s was getting cards signed. Not so much into the later years when some players lived forever and signed and signed and signed. So he was able to get a lot of signatures that are much scarcer because they did not do as many shows as others. And this is one. We had a couple examples of P. Reese signed cards from the collection. We had a 53 Bowman last auction with a 7 autograph that we thought, and some of these are hard to gauge too, because you're trying to see what past sales were, and they aren't always apples between the card, the grade of the autograph, the placement of the autograph. So that we had 7 to 1,000 on, and it brought just over 2,000. This one is much more significant, being the rookie card. So we put this at 2 to 5, and we're at 1,650 right now, not counting the premium. So we're getting close to that estimated range already, and it could go over that range as well, just because of how few of these are out there, and especially with a signature that as it shows up on his card beautifully. So a 9 is a high grade for an autograph, but on this card, it really, to me, it looks like a 10. But I'm not the third party grader and authenticator, so I'll go with a 9.
Yeah, I'm with you. When you look at it, I mean, there might be a couple of little spots where, you could ding it, I guess. But I mean, just how old the card is and how old the signature is. I mean, it's held up really nicely over time. But yeah, I can't imagine it's easy to get a 9 auto grade on pre-war cards, pre-war autos.
Right.
Very, very cool. All right. Let's see. We'll stay down this road. I picked out a few of these that I thought would be interesting to look at. Let's see. I think I have another Shoeless Joe Jackson. Yeah, here we go. All right. So the 1917 Collins McCarthy Candy Company of San Francisco, Shoeless Joe Jackson. What can you tell us about this one, Alex?
So, a rare card. It looked too good to be true when it showed up. And you talk where stuff comes from. This came in a collection that was thousands of pieces.
Oh, wow.
Lots of autographs. It was a person that kind of inherits, cleans out estate. So they weren't a sports person. They just brought it to us and said, "What do you think?" And there were Babe Ruth baseballs and all these, and it didn't pass the smell test to me. So we had a lot of the autographs go to JSA and were rejected as we expected. But there's another Joe Jackson card, if we talk about that later, and the Jordan Crunch and Munch of all things in this auction that we pulled out from all of these items and said, let's see. And so we submitted this thinking, is it going to grade? Is it counterfeit? We didn't think so. It looked legit to me. So anyway,
yeah, it's got really clean lines, on the sides. Yeah.
We vet things thoroughly, and that's why third-party authenticators and graders out there. So it comes back an A because it has the slightest margin trim, but it presents beautifully.
Yeah.
So it's an A. It's going to be an order because of that, but there's really no other flaws to it. I mean, you can hold that in reflected light, not even really see surface creases, no dirt. It's a beautiful looking card. It just has that slightest of margin trims.
Yep. Yeah, but God, honestly, if you're a collector, I mean, this is an old card. I don't know how common it is to run across these cards, but
I can tell you it. And I think, again, let's give credit where credit is due. So Phil Gary is our sports consultant. He does most of the sports descriptions, or at least the research and so forth. He turned up that there are only 11 of these that have been PSA graded of any level. So 11, that's it. And even as an A, it's desirable. So when we were trying to come up with an estimate, we had a couple sales that we saw from 2021, 2022 that were a 2, and those were 18 or 19,000. There was also a sale in January of this year at auction for an A that was 30,000, which seemed like maybe it's an anomaly. So we didn't go that high. We went with the lower grade, with the lower value, even though they were 2 grade instead of an A, and made it 10 to 20. And we're right there in the middle of that range if you add in the premium. So who knows? I still say 30,000 might have been a fluke that 2 people went at it and just didn't want to stop. But you never know at auction. So no matter what, the consigner, based on what I had said, that this sort of found money, so to speak, was thrilled before it even got to this level, and we'll see where it ends up.
Yeah, I mean, bidding sitting at 12,320. I was just looking at your description here, and it's this card and really the Babe Ruth card, or the jewels, is what it sounds like out of the set. So yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of, yeah, I totally understand what you mean with, of course, if you're looking at a modern, ultra modern card that's altered, it's kind of a different story because usually a lot of them in most cases. But with a card like this, if you're just trying to collect the cards, I mean, it's like, man, I totally look at it, totally buy it, and save a few bucks just to have a copy of the card.
Yeah.
No, that's a very cool one. All right. Let's see, we'll go ahead and look at, actually, we'll mix it up a little bit here. I'm going to try to mix it up the best I can. And we've got the last thing I want to talk about is going to be, is definitely my favorite thing that you've got. Well, I can't say my favorite, but it's definitely up there. I was shocked when I saw it. All right, so we'll switch over to graded comic books. This is a comic that I badly want, an X-Men 1, and it's just going to be, it's not going to be this copy. This one is a little bit higher than where I'm looking to be at a 5.0. Really beautiful copy of this is an all-time classic if you're a vintage comic book collector.
Yeah. This auction, we have almost every Marvel Silver Age key, couple missing, but most. And this is right up there with any of them. As popular as Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and Hulk are and have been, this book continues to gain steam. X-Men was a title, if you know the history of it, and it had horrible sales in the 70s. It was almost canceled, and Giant Size X-Men helped with the resurgence, and the rest is history because now it's as hot as as important as any Marvel property. But this is just a great copy. Don't have to break the bank, right? So again, we go back to the nature of what we do, and I'll be the first to say I love 6 and 7 figure items. Who wouldn't as an auction company? The reality is there's far less players at that level than there are for lower price items. So a 5.0 is still a nice grade of a key book. You can build a nice Silver Age collection in this mid range, and again, not break the bank, but still have great pieces that do continue to go up in value because just like Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth are going nowhere, Spider-Man and X-Men are going nowhere. They are always going to be in the public eye and certainly in the pop culture world. That's for sure. Yeah,
I love this copy too. I always see where there's writing on the cover. And even if it's like a 6.0 or a 2.0 or whatever, I'm trying to find a copy that doesn't have any sort of writing. And this one just looks so clean, on the cover. There, because you see that all the time. Someone wrote on it, Bobby's X-Men or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Well,
and this is also one, and it has a little bit of aging, but with that mostly white background, a lot of white background, that can really age and be tan. So again, not a perfect copy. It's 5. It's mid grade, but it's extremely presentable. That's for sure. Nice eye appeal.
Yeah, we'll go over to the other book that you were talking about with the resurgence, the Giant Size X-Men. Now, I do have a copy of this book in an 8.5 that I got from Hake's. So, but this is such a classic cover, and it's kind of like what you were saying. It was the resurgence back, X-Men making a comeback.
Yeah, and this is one that has, CGC has been big on doing these custom labels, so it has a nice X-Men related tag on it. And an 8.5 is a great grade. Again, another white cover, so it can show its age. This one is nice strong color, and again, just a classic. I mean, a Len Wein story, and I'm a Swamp Thing fan. He co-created Swamp Thing, but I'd say second for me from Len is this, which is at the time a big risk, to come out with a team of unknowns. I mean, Wolverine was his second full appearance, so he had been previous to this issue. But Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Thunderbird, all brand new. So you're sort of doing a relaunch and hoping something happens. Well, it did. It took a little bit. I mean, it wasn't like an instant hit. It took a couple years, and then by the time you get into the late 70s and early 80s, then X-Men is outselling everything, right? Had a big battle between DC's Teen Titans, New Teen Titans, and X-Men. Both were huge sellers, and that's why early 80s they actually had a crossover between the two, which is unusual. Marvel and DC typically did not play well together.
Yeah, I didn't realize they had a crossover, because you're right, man. They battled each other like crazy.
Yeah, there were a couple, late 70s, Superman, Spider-Man. In fact, they just Marvel, DC just got together and put out. They're doing 2 hardcovers of all of their crossovers and their mashups. And supposedly each a one-time printing, and that's it. So they did come together for that. And if anybody's a fan of both companies and know of some of those crossovers, or have never seen those crossovers, I highly recommend the Marvel versus DC one, because it has all of these crossovers like this, including the X-Men Titans, which was a really cool one-shot.
All right, we're going to switch over to action figures. I'm going straight to the big dog of the auction, and it is the Boba Fett rocket firing prototype. You guys, I swear, it's like, man, anytime there's a huge auction sale for an action figure, I know it's Hake's. Hake's has always got, you guys find these unbelievable action figures. And I know, speaking of Star Wars, you've got the Ultimate collection coming next year, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we, not to toot our own horn, but I will. We're America's first collectibles auction house, right? We started in 1967. There were no others. And at that time, it was, we've talked about this before, primarily political, and then it started to slowly branch out into sports and comics and so on and so forth. I started with the company in 1985, so I'm coming up on 40 years. And it just so happens that 1985 was the first year that we offered Star Wars items, right? So by then, 77, 78 is when the first merchandise came out. 85, people were already collecting that. So we were way ahead of the curve. And then 6-7 years ago, we started offering the Russell Branton Star Wars collection, which at that time was the be-all, end-all. And that really changed things, because that's the first time that a major third-party graded collection of Star Wars of that caliber had ever hit the market. So over the next year and a half, we set all kind of records, including our first Boba Fett prototype, which led to, I think this is now the 9th that we've had. We had an 85 plus of this particular version sell for $185,000 in 2019.
Wow.
We actually had an 80 plus near mint in 2022. Outperformed that, and that sold for $236,000. So that's still a record to this day for that version. And there, estimated 75 to 100 of these out there. So it's not like it's one of a kind or uber rare. Right. It certainly is rare, but it's like the 52 Mantle, right? Not exactly the rarest card, but anybody gets into sports card collecting wants that, right? So if you get into Star Wars action figure collecting, the prototype of Boba Fett, this rocket firing, is at the top of your list. So, so we'll see what this one does in comparison to the others. The whole Star Wars section this time is loaded to those other prototypes and first shots and highest graded examples and foreign figures. And I mentioned all of that because that leads into the collection that you had alluded to. In January of 2025, we will start selling the Jeff Jacob action figure collection, which the emphasis on that is Star Wars. It is almost every production piece ever made in every country, and many are the highest graded. So that is a historic, legendary collection that sort of shocked the world when it was announced that A, he was going to get rid of it, and B, that we were going to have it. So anyway, that's January. But if you're into Star Wars, we've got plenty for you in this current auction.
So they had released this thing, and the issue was it fired this rocket, and they felt like it wasn't safe for kids, so they pulled it, and that's why there was only so many made.
Correct. Yeah, they were all to be destroyed, but as we know, things fall into employees' pockets as they leave the building that day, right? That's why there are, and most of those have come from previous employees. It's been documented in many cases. But yes, choking hazard. It was a tricky mechanism, right? So there's this L slot that we have here, and there's a J slot. So the L slot is what it says. The firing mechanism moved in an L way, and you tapped it and it fired. Well, it was sort of a hair trigger that it would fire all the time. So they made the J to kind of lock it in place. But, all along they're having production problems. And then the choking hazard happens. There's a Battlestar Galactica toy where a kid does choke on a rocket and dies. So all of this led to scrap it. We're going to glue this in place. Initially this was a mail away figure. And I remember as a kid, that was my era. I saw Star Wars, the original Star Wars, in the movie theater when it first came out, and I had all the figures. I still have them in my office back here in a case, and I sent away for this figure, and supposed to be rocket firing, and it shows up, and it's not. And then after that, then it became a production figure, and they put it on your standard blister card and sold it that way. Initially, this was a mail away.
I will say too, I know we're showing kind of like the best of the best as far as Star Wars, but you guys always do have, and especially as we move into 2025, for people that are looking to kind of get their feet wet into these Star Wars figures, whether in box or out of box graded, you guys have always a huge variety at different price points, going back to the original 70s Kenner stuff. So I always like checking it out.
No, and there'll be plenty of that coming up. And that's one thing you'll see definitely on our online exclusive auctions. We have tons of Star Wars and other action figures, loose graded, carded graded, box graded, that are in the $75 and $100 and $200 and $300 range. So if you're a collector on a budget, we can help you out. If you want to go for the high end, we can help you out. We understand, as everyone at Hake's is and always has been, starting with Ted Hake, our founder, a collector. So we get it. We understand. We all want to build our collections. Then it's a matter of how much do we have and how much do we want to spend.
Now, showing the variety again, you've got the tall boys. Love this set. 6970 Topps basketball complete set, PSA graded. So it looks to me like it's the entire, is it 72 cards? No, 99 cards.
99. Mm-hmm.
And then you've got a variety of different grades, it looks like.
Yeah. And this is by no means a high grade set. This is sort of a low mid set, but as you said, of a classic, right? So you have tons of rookie cards, Lou Alcindor, aka Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? So yeah, this is just a classic set, 98 player cards and then a checklist card, but a who's who of superstars of the day and of previous years and of future Hall of Famers. And this was one that really kind of kickstarted basketball cards again, because they had been sporadic from, a couple players were in different sets from the 30s and 40s. I think the Galley Sport King set, 33 had one basketball player in it. Then in 48, Bowman put out the first basketball full-fledged set. 57, Topps comes back with a set. 61, Fleer comes with a set. You can see there's gaps in between. But then from 69 into the early 80s, then it was Topps until it was Fleer. But Topps kind of had the resurgence of basketball cards throughout the 70s, and then into the classic set that has, one card with Dr. J and Magic and Larry Bird on when he did those 3-on-1 cards. So it was Topps for a good decade of dominating the basketball card market.
Did Topps, was this the first 60s Topps set? I know they made,
it was.
They did, but the 60s, they were out until 69?
69, 70. Before that, it was 61 Fleer. So there was that whole gap where there were no basketball. Baseball from the get-go was super popular and had everything available to it, right? As soon as it could be on television, it was, and all the endorsements and all the products. But basketball, much like football, it took decades until it got to the level where it was a major sport that demanded a card set every year and so on and so forth.
It's wild to think about that, considering how popular basketball cards are today and just how they have been, going back the last couple of decades, at least. But yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
Just they never really
Mm.
caught on, going back in time a
No.
little bit.
Well,
But
that's my favorite sport is basketball, and I played as a kid, and there were games on in the '70s, and there was again cards in the '70s. But when Magic and Bird entered the league, that changes everything, right? From
yeah,
from that point on, it became major, and then of course Jordan and so on and so forth. But for a long time, it wasn't underground, but it was baseball was way up, and then all the other team sports were far behind, and now we can see that's certainly changed. The NFL, how many billions of dollars a year does that generate? So,
absolutely. Going back to the 80s pop culture goodness, I had to pull this out because what the heck? Like, what is this? So I did remember that there were Indiana Jones action figures going back in time, but this one caught my eye because it's a rare, it looks, well, clearly it's a rare figure of the big baddie, the big bad from Temple of Doom, right?
correct. So this is the same principle as Boba Fett.
Okay.
This originally was a mail away figure only, and then a small amount made it onto a card. It's not really documented why. Salesman sample, toy fair, mock up, and then this one at least has a price sticker. So at some point, it was going to be, in a store for whatever reason. But there are only a couple of these known on the card. So it's for any action figure line, it's as rare as any figure of any of those lines for a piece to be on a card like this. Only example we've ever offered. I think this is the first time this is at auction, and it is, to show its rarity, it's one of only 4 graded by AFA.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's just another one of those anomalies that really shouldn't exist, but it does, or at least a few do.
Yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay, so you've got 9 action figures. Actually, I remember this guy, the guy that melts, the evil,
Yeah.
the evil Nazi guy. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a very popular series, and they did play sets. You can see some of those on the back, and they did horse, and
Yeah.
But I think it kind of lost favor very quickly because before this figure was put into production on card, the line was canceled, so it had a short shelf life, and then this figure suffered by it not continuing. As you know, many action figure series, you'll see series 1, series 2, series 3, right? So this was going to go into another series, and then the plug was pulled.
Interesting. Yeah, so he's not a part of the 9, right? Am I missing it? Or
He's on the back as part of the 9, but it was never like the others that were full-fledged mass produced. So it's included, but it never made it to the production line like those did.
really interesting. Well, sitting there with a $10,000 bid, people are, it's amazing. Some of these really niche, figures, people are all over this stuff. But, again, I doubt these, probably doesn't ever pop up. So I'm sure there's people like lying in wait, for these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, let's see. We've got a couple left. I'm going to try to save the best for last here. Let me make sure that I manage this properly. Because the last one is just unbelievable. Okay. Like, I'm going to be selfish, and we've got to look at the Eternia playset. You guys have another one of these, because I remember you had this going back in the summertime?
In last auction, yes, in July.
Yeah.
The first version, which the first version says new on the box. This is the second version. So there's subtle differences. Essentially, the contents are the same, the artwork's the same, but there are subtle differences. Yeah, that was an AFA 80, which was the highest of any AFA examples of that version, and that brought 23,000. So this one is the second version and slightly lesser grade, but they're all rare because, and you can see we have this example has a clearance price sticker. Clearance price was $70. So this was an expensive piece, much like the G.I. Joe flag, which is another gigantic playset from the 80s, the aircraft carrier. They were just so incredibly expensive, they didn't sell, right? You had the rich kid that lived down the block, maybe he had it, and everyone else just had the basic action figure. So now that all of this 80s property is becoming so popular, and the people that want to reclaim their youth and the people that never had this back then are paying. So actually a $70 investment back then for something that's now $10,000 doesn't seem bad, but they asked your parents for a $70 toy back then. That was a lot of money, and most of us didn't get this.
I'll be honest, I don't remember seeing these in the stores. They had to have been somewhat limited because Castle Grayskull obviously is around. You can find those. I mean, they made a lot of those, but I don't remember seeing a lot of these Eternia sets. And I know my parents didn't, or my buddies did not have it.
It's not only was it expensive for the parents to buy, it was expensive for the stores to stock. So there were plenty of stores that might have gotten one or didn't get any, and they thought, we can sell the figures at $5 all day long. Let's load up on those and not put the money into this. So yeah, Grayskull was probably the best selling of those big expensive pieces. But the Eternia, and like I said, the flag for G.I. Joe aircraft carrier, not so much, and why they are so coveted today, and especially when you get examples like this that are sealed.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. Really, the coolest part of all this stuff, and just the action figures in general, as you've talked about, is the box art. It's the boxes that they came in, and of course you got the action figures inside, but it's really, it's the same with video games, where you've got like original Nintendo, games or Atari. It's the actual box art, especially now when with video games. I buy my son a game, we just download it. You don't have that sort of artwork that goes into it.
Well, that was the selling point, right? That was the book cover, that was the album cover.
Yep.
You had to have something to get your attention because the shelves weren't empty. The shelves were full of other toy lines. So you had to stand out. So there was a lot of that between the different companies, and even the same companies in different lines that they had of how do we make these things pop? How do we make it, even if it's a popular property like this, you still have to have that kid go into the store and want that particular piece. So, and that's why so much of this stuff is just so great to look at. The visual appeal of the 80s toys is in the artwork.
Oh, man. All right. So we're going to go to the last item. I'll tell a little story about this. So this is the Dr. Seuss, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This is the costume that the stunt double as well as Jim Carrey wore in that, was it 1999 or 2000 when that movie came out, when he played the Grinch. So it's on set. I'll let you explain more, Alex, but I don't think this had a bid last night when I was looking at it, and I was like, man, I might need to take a run at this, because this is one of those, again, kind of like nostalgic prop things. We're talking before the stream about Jim Carrey. I've been following Jim Carrey going all the way back to Stand Up and In Living Color and his early days, and saw his rise. So he's just such a legend in my book. And this one popped up, and you see the rise, and I don't want to say the rise of the movie prop stuff or the show props, because it's not some brand new thing. People have been spending money on this stuff for a while. It's not some new phenomenon, but it does feel like there is a resurgence or just kind of more momentum around these sorts of things, especially like this, where you just have such a nostalgic character.
Yeah, well, props in general are interesting because they reach such a wide audience, and you don't have to become a collector of everything. So if you're a fan of Jim Carrey, here's a great piece. If you're a fan of The Walking Dead, you could buy one piece and just kind of have it on display. And I think you see that a lot. And there are some collectors that go crazy for props, and that's all they do, and that's all they want. And there are others that are just fan of a movie or they'll get a movie poster, or they'll get a signed movie poster or something. So there's a lot of cross interest between hardcore collectors and those that are just fans of the movie or TV show and want something from it. So that's why when props come up, there's always such a big bidding pool because of this cross interest between these various groups. This is great because it is a major display piece.
Yeah.
The original owner of this took the time to put it all on a mannequin. The head is a one-of-a-kind creation done. This is not part of the prop. This was just done to complete the display. So, this is something that instantly, if you have the room and you want a Grinch all year round to look at. This is a piece that you buy, you put it wherever you want on display, and boom, there it always is, and it will always get a reaction by whoever sees it.
And you had said, we were talking about this, so this is something that Jim Carrey wore on set.
Yeah, it's all documented. He's got his markings inside of it as well of name of his stunt double. So yeah, there are pieces from movies that are set dressing. There are pieces from movies that might only be used for a photo. You know, we had the Captain America shield that we sold.
Yeah,
got a record price $259,000.
Yeah, I remember that.
But it was immaculate. Well, it was immaculate because it was only used for still shots. It wasn't one of the stunt ones that got all beat up. So you have different levels of props, or were they used? Were they just for stills? This was used and worn in the film by Jim Carrey.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. I don't know. Well, you know, we talked about, I'm a huge Stranger Things fan, so I know that you guys are gonna have Stranger Things props coming at some point down the line after the show's over. And so, yeah, I'm hesitant because this is going to take up a lot of space, and I'll probably be buying more of the stuff. But I had to share that though, because this is one that I might make a run at. It's just it's unbelievable. Well, Alex, thanks, man. What's that?
I said there it is.
Yeah, you've got it there, and that kind of gives me a visual of where I could put that in the room. I think it would actually be a cool piece to put like behind me for my videos too. So that could
it comes apart. It's the body comes apart in two, so it's not like you have to lug this whole thing around. You can put it in stages and set it up, and yeah.
All right, yeah, that's on the radar. So we'll see what happens. I might make a move on that one, man. Thank you so much for coming back again for another show. I hope to have you in 2025. I'm ready to do this all over again. This is my jam, literally. I mean, you guys, there's always something unique. You know, you always have. I remember I believe the last cover was the Freddy Krueger art.
That was last time was Captain America #1. That was 2 times ago. The Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Poster prototype art. Yeah.
The original
also
art.
One of a kind.
Yeah, and that's what's so great. You guys have such a huge mix of pop culture with sports, and you have all price points. So, guys, if you're watching this, you catch it on the replay, make sure to check out Hake's auction. This one's going to end on the 19th and 20th. And so don't miss out. Take a peek at it. There's probably something on the site, a hidden gem that you didn't know was there. So, Alex, good seeing you, buddy. We'll be back again. We'll be back again next time. See you guys.